Umar Farouk Abdul Muttalib, the underwear bomber. His attempt to blow up Northwest Airlines Flight 253 to Detroit would have been preposterous if he hadn't come so close to killing himself and nearly 300 other people on Christmas Day.
We heard a loud pop, then a bit of a smoke, and then some flames.
Nihad Awad of the Council on American Islamic Relations thought not again and knew what was coming.
That's exactly what I said. There you go again. Oh, God, help us. I hope it's not a Muslim.
But the 23-year-old Nigerian who got through security and onto Flight 253 was indeed a Muslim, trained by al-Qaeda in Yemen.
We ought to have a Muslim-only check-in line at our airports.
100% of the Islamic terrorists are Muslims, and that is our main enemy today.
Immediately, pundits and politicians started saying what a lot of Americans might have been thinking.
For one, I know it's not politically correct to say it. I believe in racial and ethnic profiling.
First of all, it is un-American. Second, have we learned any lesson from targeting minorities in America? Targeting people because of who they are is wrong, counterproductive, and we look always back in shame on our history.
After the Christmas Day incident, the Obama administration announced that citizens of 14 countries, all but one, Cuba, predominantly Muslim, would be subjected automatically to extra screening before boarding flights to the United States. That controversial policy was rescinded a few days ago, but the question remains, is racial and ethnic profiling justified? According to a recent CBS News poll, 51% of Americans say yes, compared to 38% who say no.
The attitude is, how can something that makes so much sense, that is so obvious to everybody, from the outside, not work?
Here's how I define profiling.
David Harris is a law professor at the University of Pittsburgh. He's been studying profiling for 15 years.
When race or ethnic appearance mixes into it in any way, it's a distraction and a potential disaster.
Wouldn't you be foolish not to take into consideration the fact that there might be people who fit?
There might be people who fit, but the important thing is there might be people who don't fit, who are just as dangerous, and more so because we're not looking for them.
Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber. Colleen LaRose, the blonde Pennsylvania woman who calls herself Jihad Jane. John Walker Lind, the so-called American Taliban. Not one of them fits.
You don't catch the people who you should stop, right? The Richard Reids.
Remember Richard Reid, the shoe bomber? Even though his behavior aroused suspicion, because he was British with a non-Muslim name, no one guessed he was a terrorist. But listen to the story of Mohammed Atta, the ringleader of the 9/11 hijackers.
He had this scowl. His face should be on a bottle of poison, with the bones.
Early on the morning of 9/11, Mohammed Atta and another of the hijackers appeared at the U.S. Airways counter in Portland, Maine. Customer service agent Michael Toohey checked them in for the 6 a.m. plane to Boston.
What ran through my mind, I says, if this guy doesn't look like a typical Arab terrorist, nobody does. I thought that. I actually thought that. And then I gave myself a mental slap for being stereotypical.
Just over 3 hours later, hijackers crashed American Airlines Flight 11 into the North Tower of the World Trade Center.
And initially, I felt bad because they were dead. Then that thought came back to me about this. If this guy don't look like a stereotypical Arab terrorist, and I think he was an Arab terrorist. And I just felt sick to my stomach.
Isn't Michael Toohey's failure to report Mohammed Atta and stop him affirmation of the position of people who say we have to be
I think what what keyed Michael Tui's concern was the behavior and the actions of Muhammad Atta.
Carl Macario is an analyst for TSA, the Transportation Security Administration. He helped develop a program called SPOT, short for Screening Passengers by Observation Techniques. In other words, behavioral, not racial or ethnic profiling.
I don't want to get into specific behaviors, but I can tell you this: the cues that we look for are associated with the fear of discovery.
Body language, for example, nervousness, anger. So-called behavior detection officers, or BDOs, are not the TSA agents herding you and your belongings through checkpoints. BDOs might be standing to one side, observing passengers in line, but in fact, they could be anywhere. And if they see something that doesn't look right, they move in and ask a few questions.
How was your trip to Boston? Where did you go? Who did you see? It's almost immaterial what your answers are to my questions. It's how you react to the engagement.
Since the SPOT program got underway in 2003, approximately 250,000 people have been identified for additional screening. Roughly 10% of those have been handed over to law enforcement. Almost 250 have been arrested, although none for terrorism so far.
It's based on everything from what you're wearing to how you walk.
Paul Ekman taught more than a third of TSA's 3,000 behavior detection officers what to look for. If you've got something to hide, a split-second grimace can give you away.
In a fraction of a second, it'll flash momentarily to an emotion, and you have to guess which one. What was it?
Surprise?
And we find out you were right.
Ekman is widely considered the leading expert in the study of microexpressions. The television show Lie to Me is based on his research.
What do you see?
Anger.
I want to be clear that this should never be and is not regarded as the only form of security. It's, in a sense, the last ditch, but we need every layer. Body scanning, from my vantage point, yes, absolutely yes. Metal detectors, yes. TSA behavioral detection officers, yes.
We have 3,000 now. Ekman says we need another 25,000.
There may be some cities, major airports, where less than a third of the traffic lines are being observed. Why should the Israelis have more protection than we do? There is no line where there aren't people watching you in Israel.
And you can't get on a plane without being interviewed or having your bags searched. Israeli security is considered the gold standard. So why can't we just do what Israel does? If nothing else, because of volume. Around 9 million passengers fly in or out of Israel's Ben Gurion Airport each year. More than 600 million board flights in the United States. But there are lessons we can learn from the Israelis, especially how to use intelligence to identify high-risk passengers.
It starts long before the passenger shows up at the airport. It starts when passenger books for a flight and provides basic information.
Rafi Ron is former head of security at Tel Aviv's Ben Gurion Airport and is now an airline security consultant here in the United States. Where we fail and the Israelis succeed, he says, is in knowing how to act on the intelligence that's gathered.
The communication between the intelligence community and the people that execute security in the field is very, very close, very, very tight, and very, very fast.
Which wasn't the case with the Christmas Day underwear bomber.
There's no question that the intelligence layer failed badly in this case.
It sounds like not much has changed since 9/11.
Well, I'm afraid I have to support that statement.
Hindsight is 20/20. Yeah, I went to therapy over that. I spent a lot of time in therapy. Why didn't I see this? Why was this evil being in front of me? And even though I sort of recognized it, I didn't. Why didn't I listen to my instincts? I'll tell you,
Retired now, Michael Toohey is still tormented by his encounter with Mohammed Atta on 9/11. But what was it, Atta's behavior or who he was, that got Toohey's attention? He has become an unapologetic supporter of profiling, unfair or not.
Racial and ethnic profiling, yes, they're not good things, but they're a tool. You're inconvenienced. You got profiled. It's a safety check. Are you unhappy because you're safe? What is more important to you, your safety or your ethnicity? Your safety, your ethnicity, or your life?
On April 2nd, when it was announced that TSA would no longer single out travelers from 14 countries, it was a significant shift away from racial and ethnic profiling. From now on, intelligence will determine who gets extra screening. The policy will apply to all passengers flying to the United States. Profiling expert David Harris.
You know, profiling, all this stuff, this is a sideshow. This is a distraction. People who want to talk about, well, we should be looking for Muslims, things like that. Intelligence is it. We have just got to get the intelligence end of it right.